Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Blackjack Apprenticeship podcast. Feels like a little bit of time since we talked to y'all, but with me as always, the amazing, the huge-hearted, the extremely attractive Joe748.
All right, you can take back the last part. We all know that's an exaggeration, but I'll take it. Thanks for doing the intro, by the way.
Yeah, everybody always jokes about how I have a love affair with you. I'm like, well, it's not far from the truth. The man's amazing. He's a good guy. I love him. He's a really good friend of mine.
We do have some mailbag questions for y'all, and we're going to get into them right now. We got all different kinds of topics, so let's get to it. The first question is, I'm going to summarize this because it's a pretty detailed, long question, but here are the main points. This person said they have a really high value game near them, but the minimum bet is like $200, $300. They've done the calculation on the pro betting software. They can handle a $200 game. Probably not the 300 without going over 1% risk of ruin, but they're getting a lot of hours in and they're disciplined with their own cover approach. With a 200 to 2 by 1,000 bet spread, EV is really high. It's over $900 an hour. Now, the question is, this place, it raises red flags to drop 5,000 or more for a buy-in. It's an instant phone call. What do you do in this scenario when you're trying to navigate? Should you play an all-out bet spread on this? Should you not? With that high minimum.
When you drop 5,000, period? Like total? Like over 2 hours?
I guess so, yeah. I guess buy-in, yeah.
Well, let's just make sure and clarify that you shouldn't be buying in for 5,000 on that game to start. So just in case that's what they're asking, don't do that. If you're playing two hands of 200, then you should buy in for like $600. That's it. So just to make sure that that is not what they're asking. Avoiding actually buying in for 5,000 for the quote instant phone call. If you know that's happening, then maybe you do switch it up a little bit and you come in and fire. And I'm thinking about this. Do the opposite of what I just said. If you know that is factual, you buy in for 5,000. You get the phone call and you play a shoe flat betting with it a couple bumps up and down. And that's it. Because if it's an instant phone call and they're instantly running you down because of what you bought in for, well, then you just checked a box and you're good to go.
Let's do some quick napkin math here for the cost of that cover. So the problem was that it was a $200 to $300 min game. All right, so let's say, I think the example, it was a double deck game around half of a deck cut off. So we'll estimate about 20 hands in that shoe before the cut card comes out. So we'll do 20 times $200 minimum bet, and then we'll multiply that by about 0.4% negative house edge, 0.38, yeah. So that'll be $152. So yeah, you just have to ask yourself, is it going to be worth $152 to try that out, to test it, to see if it works? Could very well be worth it, especially if it's your local and you're going to be there for lots and lots of hours. That, negative cost of $150 is probably well worth testing out. Now, if they do call up right away, do you just kind of keep a chip inventory for next time, or?
Yeah, so then the question becomes, every time you buy in for 5,000, they're doing an instant call. At what point are they, quote, used to you? I'm assuming that you're playing rated at this point. If you're not playing rated, hopefully you become friendly with them to the point where they're not making the call anymore. So you might have to give up some EV for the first few visits doing this. The other side would be, chip inventory. But playing that game, you're going to run into a $5,000 buy-in. Like you just can't avoid that.
Yeah, and also, if you're playing a $200 or $300 min game, they're going to call at some point really quickly, regardless of what happens. Like, it's not even anything about heat. It's if you have someone that's playing that much, I mean, they want some extra set of eyes on just for, dealer mistakes and things like that. So I wouldn't sweat it too much about, well, how can I get away with this without, they're going to notice. There's no way they're not going to notice that.
Yeah. So this is where intel can be extremely valuable. And if you're on point with what you're saying, then it could be exceptionally valuable. Now you just have to hope they don't listen to our podcast.
Don't worry, they're not listening.
Okay. How do you get the money on the felt without getting an instant CTR? I guess they're just betting big?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the only way is basically you go in with a chip inventory ahead of time. Either buy chips from your friend before you get there or buy chips the day before or something, play a little bit and then leave.
Or slow roll them? Yeah, slow roll them. So the first couple visits, you're not really going that huge and you're just collecting chips over that course. You can kind of combine. You can buy chips, you can slow roll, you can get some from friends and build up a really good chip inventory. When you use chips, though, only chips every time you come in, it can get a little sus. So what I would say is like mix it up a little bit. Use cash sometimes. If you're really adamant about avoiding the CTR because you're not playing rated, you got to be willing to walk if you're getting your ass kicked. And that means cutting it off at the right time. Because if you're in 8 or 9 grand and you're spreading that big, you are going to inevitably run into a shoe that is fire. You should not walk away from it. And if you get your ass kicked more, you're going to CTR. So you got to know when to cut it off and be like, okay, I just got killed for 8 grand. I'm going to book this loss and I'm just going to walk.
Yeah, and you can also, you don't have to, some people when they think, oh, I have let's say they have a, $10,000 chip inventory, they come in and they feel like they have to use all the chips first and then buy in all the cash. You can blend in the cash with the chips here and there. So, buy in for 500 and then just like slowly sneak out a few black chips here and there and then just keep going that to the point where your total is, you're flirting around the $15,000 range as far as like how much you brought in and how much cash you brought. And you should be good for a lot of bet spreads. Should be. What's the general feeling of going from a $100 min game to a $200 min game? We got some high rollers listening to the podcast.
Yeah, I love it. General feeling, I don't feel like that's much different.
I personally feel sick. Only because I hate giving away $200 minimum on the negatives, but
it's high rent. I mean, you only play these games if you have a really, really big bankroll. And even then, it's because the game is that good. So make sure it's that good. And I mean real good to be playing that rent. Okay. When do you spread with a small $2,000 to $5,000 bankroll? How do you know what to spread in general? 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 1 to 20? We can spam PBS, of course, but also give some kind of advice that can kind of answer this. So I guess this is coming from, we get a lot of questions that are similar to this. So just to review, how do you spread with a really small bankroll, with a micro bankroll? Don't be insulted by saying micro. But yeah, how do you spread? PBS is, I'm going to say step one, you have to use the pro betting software. Like you have to know what your cost is and what your risk of ruin is and all that stuff. That is going to dictate 99% of it. The rest is just, the last 1% is just your personal choice.
Yeah, and I think the smaller the bankroll you have, the more important using software, betting software is for you, because a tiny, tiny change could make a huge difference in your risk when it's at the 2,000 to 5,000 level bankroll. If you have like $100,000 bankroll, or you have a decent spread that's like 1 to 20 or 1 to 30 or something, one little change here or there of the penetration or the rules, it's not going to drastically swing it to potentially being like too risky to play. But if you have a $2,000 bankroll, one tiny little change can drastically swing it from a 1% risk or ruin to like a 30%. It's crazy. So you have to be really careful at the 2,000 to 5,000 range. That being said, the negatives are going to like really kill you at this $2,000 to $5,000 level. I usually advertise people to play as little negatives as humanly possible if you're at a $2,000 to $5,000 bankroll, especially if you're creeping up into the $15 minimum. $25 minimum is very questionable if you can even safely play that game. Most of the times it's not going to be playable, especially on a shoe game. Playing a $25 min shoe game on a $3,000 bankroll is it's basically suicide, I think.
I agree. And I hope to God that everybody that has that size bankroll isn't relying on that money, because that hourly you could get more working at McDonald's. So, sure, play on the side, have a job, build up the bankroll 2 ways by playing, but then also another income stream that you can build that up, because you're not going to be able to even come close to living off of that, even if you're the kid living in with his parents still with next to no bills. Like, it's still next to impossible.
Oh, yeah. So besides like avoiding negatives, then looking for really good, favorable rules like surrender, resplit aces is almost non-negotiable for a shoe game. Having resplit aces at that level, double deck is with a good cut. Double deck with a center cut is like the same as an average shoe game with 1.5 cutoff. So the double deck has to have a better cut. What else? Yeah, I mean, shoe games, I wouldn't play anything over a deck cutoff, honestly, for 6 deck at that level.
It's funny, I would also act like I do now, and I would absolutely refuse to play with more than one person. The full table or more than one person is just going to kill your rounds per hour and kill your hourly on that bankroll. That's just, that's a slog.
If you guys didn't know, so what SD1 is kind of alluding to is that because if you're protecting your risk at that $2,000 to $5,000 level, if you are going to play with a 1% risk or less with that bankroll, your hourly is not going to be super high. So then you add 3-4 players in. Now what you've essentially done is you're risking the same amount of money you are for a better hourly for a very, very mediocre hourly that's probably matching minimum wage or something at that point. But you're risking $5,000 to do so. Not worth it.
Let's jump to this one. How do the value of deviations compare to using a specific basic strategy based on the game's rules? Example, double deck, splitting 2s, 3s, and 7s against one more card rank. Okay. So what they're referring to is deck composition strategies, which honestly, for the most part, is kind of related specifically to a single deck game. There are some small differences with the double deck game, and then there's shoe stuff. In terms of how do I value the deviations are always going to add that same percentage, 25 to 30%, not 25 to 30% more edge. 25 to 30% of your edge will come from the deviations. But let's remember, the first thing that actually gets you the money is your spread. But obviously that means playing perfect and having the house's edge at minimum, which means basic strategy. So back to this question. For me, I don't think deck composition strategy is really necessarily worth it, except on single deck. Single deck, it matters for sure. And if you are playing some of the very few single deck games, this is where I wish Nichols was on right now, because he's played a lot of them. It can be really valuable to you. Other than that, that's why BJA has a basic strategy chart that can be utilized for all games. And then the most valued deviations can be played, and that can span from double deck to 8 deck and work very, very well for you.
I request just a single deck podcast with Nichols at the next boot camp, because he has some really amazing, funny stories too. Because when you're playing single deck in these small towns, there's this whole weird element of the human, like the dealers, and because they're in direct control of your penetration and shuffling and all that stuff. So he's got some really funny stories, but we'll try to get that recorded in a few weeks. Sorry, Nichols, but I'm signing you up for it right now, whether you know it or not. All right. While some deviations like splitting 10s could draw additional heat, are there deviations that you feel help act as cover?
The answer is yes and no. So, depending on where you are, splitting 10s could be cover. They could think you're just a psychopath degenerate. So, it's not a hard and fast rule that 10s are going to draw heat. There are places like Las Vegas, that's like the place that I don't split 10s at, that I do think, by and large, it draws heat. But it's not a hard and fast rule again. In terms of other deviations, my favorite deviation has always been doubling an 8 versus a 6. And for some reason, over the course of my career, it's just happened so rarely that I get to do it, that I just think it's just fun to double an 8 versus a 6. Do I think that it acts as cover? Maybe, maybe not. Just like splitting 10s. Doubling a soft 21 can't. I will say this. I'll add one thing about deviations. For some reason, though splitting tends to be one that does draw heat. Doubling a soft 20 tends to not draw heat, in my experience, which is kind of funny to me.
Yeah, I agree on all those points. I'm looking at the hit 17 deviation chart right now on blackjackapprenticeship.com, and doubling ace 8 versus 4 5 6 sometimes for me, I feel like has made people question some things. But the really nuanced ones, like doubling ace 6 versus 2, I don't think that really gives you any cover. Like the 16s versus the 9s and the 10s, I just think it's so 50-50 for in their eyes that they don't really see that as much. The 12s versus the 2s and 3s, maybe some places every once in a while. But yeah, I mean, some of the surrenders on the expanded chart can be interesting because it can get really weird and you're like really low, like you're surrendering 14s, against 9s and things like that. So at certain times. So maybe stuff like that where they just think it's too aggressive.
Even 14 versus a 10, I feel like looks stupid on the behalf of the gambler.
Yeah. If you guys go into the chart section of blackjackapprenticeship.com, we have hit 17 and stand 17 expanded deviation charts, and there's a lot of really fun deviations in here. If you want to take the extra time to memorize them, there's a lot of good fun things that could be seen as cover more so than the regular hit 17 deviation chart.
Is there a map for Europe where it's fine to play and casinos not worth a visit?
There isn't an official full-on database map of every single casino in Europe that has beatable games, etc. On Casino 411, we do have a bunch of listings if other users have been there and they've reported, but there is in Europe a ton of places that haven't been updated. That's good and bad. The good news is when you find something, it's likely you're the only one that's found it in a really long time. The bad news is it just takes a little more work to travel around and go to all those places. I did go on a really long scouting trip in Europe years ago, maybe 6 years ago at this point now, and I do have a map that I show at boot camp that shows you all the places that had beatable games, shoe games, all the places that had CSMs and things like that. It's been a while, so I don't want to just put it on 411 because I don't know how reliable it is, especially because it was pre-COVID and it seems like everything changed after COVID. But yeah, I suggest if you have the time and the money to go travel and scout, definitely go for it. You might find something really, really valuable.
Do you guys actually believe card counting in blackjack will continue to be a reliable strategy or job for the next decade?
Oh, let me get my magic 8-ball out, shake it and see what we have. This is a good question, actually, because this has been asked over and over again for years. And yeah, things do change. Like regions change, heat changes a lot, penetration changes. I think the place that consistently goes through the most changes is probably Vegas over the years, as far as drastic change or like changes that are like really noticeable. It's like, whoa. Oh, 2 years ago, every single table at this strip casino wasn't 6 to 5, things like that. I think it happens way more in places like Vegas.
Yeah. To Joe's point, people have called the end of counting cards for 30, 40 plus years. So I would say that over the next decade, I feel pretty good about it. Will counting cards last forever? No. But for the foreseeable future, it's not going away. And there's reasons for that. Number one is the gamblers really do like specific games. And blackjack is still one of the most popular casino games. Even with the advent of 6-5 blackjack, all that stuff, and Vegas doing the things they're doing, Vegas is hurting right now, guys. Like they're down 25, 30%. Things are going to change. I think games are going to change, and everything is cyclical to a degree. I see locals with 6-5 tables, and I'm like, who the heck do you guys think you are? But that can't last. They are reactionary by nature. That's what casinos are. They are not proactive. They are almost always reactive. So they will react to market conditions, the bottom line, because it's not ran by the mob anymore, guys. It's ran by shareholders, and they want to get that half penny to a penny to their ticker price. That's the objective. So whatever they need to do to make that happen will make it happen. So games will change, more casinos will be built, and counting will live on, in my estimation, for quite some time. The other question I get about counting is, of course, like facial recognition and AI, and will cash go away? Not anytime soon, guys. And not only that, I keep saying this, the more relied upon technology is, I think as an AP, they become easier to exploit because they have less actual people that know what they're doing. And that's already a thing. Pit bosses back in the day, a lot of them really used to always have a couple guys that knew how to run somebody down, or the surveillance room, like somebody really sharp, not just like, hey, learn basic strategy and learn these few things that card counters do, which is essentially what they do now. Nowadays, it's pretty rare to find a pit boss that can run somebody down, or somebody in a surveillance room that can run somebody down in that way without using software. So again, that's exploitable if you understand the conditions and the technology they're using. Even large language learning models, like AI is coming, but it's still a machine and it can be fooled. That's just my perspective on it. So next decade, I feel pretty confident in saying yes.
That was really good. I kind of want to go down some speculation alleys too while we're at it. So let's just take it by categories here. CSM takeover. It doesn't appear that the CSM leases are getting any cheaper over time. If anything, they're raising the price. That's not spreading. If it became basically the same price to operate a CSM as it did to do a hand shuffle or automatic shuffle that's not CSM, then we could see a problem. But that hasn't appeared to be happening. The second thing would be something that's really great about card counting in the US is the competition between casinos. Like you said, Vegas is hurting. If Vegas ever gets its act together and realizes, oh, we need to stop being cheap asses and actually give the customer something, give them a breadcrumb of some kind of incentive to be here, then, you know, if the local casinos start noticing their revenues tanking because everyone's going to Vegas, then they're going to have to offer something that's attractive to the local customer to get it to come back. That's great for us too, for APs in general. So we have the competition aspect that other countries I don't think have the same competition. Other countries that are a lot smaller, they have maybe one or two companies that are running things, and they don't have the customers that they're trying to fight for, and they have to give incentives like that. Third, I could see maybe, this is a really long shot, someone would have to market Baccarat as being like the most fun thing ever, similar to like Ed Thorpe's book when it came out and everyone flooded the blackjack table because they thought it was beatable, or they thought they could beat it. If Baccarat became so popular in the US to the point where it just takes over, like they just got rid of all the blackjack tables and turned them all into Baccarat, then similar to, you know, Macau, that could be a way that blackjack would die.
What about cash?
Yeah, cash. So yeah, like you said, the things that are more likely going to be killers are sort of regulatory things. If they have a state mandated thing where they have to get ID for 2,500 or more buy-in, things like that, like, or requiring ID just more often for everything. And it's actually an ironclad policy that you literally can't cash out or do this or that without ID. You know, if they pass some kind of crazy legislation like that, that could change things.
Or just cash going away, because it's been speculated for a long time that essentially things are going to, like the crypto route, or everything's going to be digital currency. Yeah, guys, in the United States of America, there's a lot of Americans that are really big fans of cash. Now, in general, the majority of people do use a credit card these days, but there's a whole heck of a lot of those people that would be very upset if somehow, some way, you eliminated cash and made it all digital. And that's just down to our core common beliefs as Americans, to be honest. That's also the reason that the U.S. is in a surveillance state like England, with facial recognition on every single corner, where they can just watch you and all that stuff. Like, that's not allowed in the United States. And it's for the very same reason And I think cash is going to stay around for quite some time. Casinos have been trying to shift to cashless models, which is just smart for them because if the cash that turns into chips or a Tito, a slot ticket, disassociates the cash from your mind, what do you think just loading onto your app the cash does? Like, it's even more disassociation. So they're not necessarily trying to get rid of it. And for all you crypto bros out there, it's not going to be dominated by crypto anytime soon. And that's no like angle or slant on whether I think crypto is good or bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it is not going to be the keynote currency. It's just not going to. And then we could talk about a whole nother route, which is quantum computing and the fact that all of our passwords are based on prime, including crypto. So if quantum computing really is what it is, and it actually gets cracked, then not a single thing is safe, including your Bitcoin. So we can speculate about a whole lot of stuff right now, guys. But if that were to happen, you know, it would be the most valuable thing, cash and gold. And then we're right back at having physical assets.
Buy in at the table with a huge brick of gold, like you're at the saloon. Get your cowboy hat on. All those things are, yeah, you could go down the rabbit hole and say this or that, but in the meantime, while we were speculating, you could have played how many positive hands if you just went to the casinos. So I would say, yeah, if it is going to go away, then try not to waste time and get at it right now while you can, and then enjoy the ride until it's no longer rideable. I mean, I have seen, like Washington State, for example, a lot of their tables have shifted from Blackjack, regular Blackjack to Spanish 21 or Player's Edge. Now, still beatable with the right strategies and everything, not as easily as card counting is, but in that state, the local players, they love that game. They love it way more than Blackjack. And sometimes you go into a place and it's hard for them to open up a Blackjack table because they're closed and because everyone's playing Player's Edge or Spanish. So if that happened nationwide, that could be another thing. But I don't think that's just one-off state thing. And it just seems to be to that particular region.
Yeah, that's also an ebb and flow trend. I mean, when you think about gambling as a whole and how it's shown on movies or what people think, you know, there's some core games. Roulette, craps, blackjack, slots. Bach has come in a little bit more, but we're not an Asian nation. So it's popular. I just don't see it usurping blackjack. The game of 21 is just, it just is like something people think about when they think gambling at a casino.
We need Rain Man 2 to come out. Wide theatrical release and reinvigorate the spirit again.
That's the thing, though. Like, movies have come out over the years, and it always seems to be around, like, blackjack and card counting. Rain Man, The Hangover, The Gambler.
Not the card counter, ironically.
Yeah. But still, blackjack, still prevalent in it. And I would say the two biggest ones when you think somebody beating up a casino is blackjack and poker. Those are just the ones that are shown the most.
In short, it's not going anywhere for at least, I mean, honestly, I would say 10 years is pretty safe.
I think it's really safe to say that. Really, really, really safe. I think I will be able to count a game of cards all the way up until the day I die. Honestly, that's my personal opinion.
I'm looking forward to when I'm super old and I go into my local casino and it's like a place that has like a $50 max or something. And I'm just there spreading as big as I can on a $50 max and enjoying every second of it when I'm like 80 years old. I'm so looking forward to that. No ID, no hassle. They're like, oh, this old guy is just here and I'm just playing as aggressive as I possibly can.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Can you discuss overcoming the nerves at the table while counting? Do you remember your first early experiences and the nerves? How did you get over that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I definitely do. Let's just go farther back to my test out with Colin. I don't know if he remembers this, but I was visibly shaking, like sweating. Palms were sweating. And, you know, same thing at the casino. And that's I don't know if you guys could tell this or not, but I'm a pretty overly confident person. Come off that way. So even with my personality and how good I felt about where my skills were, putting the money on the table is just it's nerve-wracking. And I promise it does go away with repetition and the new normal happens. Here's a side note. My wife always jokes around about us, Joe, and APs in general. Like the way we talk about a heck of a lot of money is so not normal at all. Losses, wins, to the everyday person, like their jaw would hit the floor if they were to do something like this. They would like panic to no end. So your new normal happens, and you get used to it. That doesn't mean you always get used to the losses, though.
As far as overcoming nerves at the table for me, it was just, I think time just heals all. You just need more hours under your belt to get used to the way it looks, changing your bets, buying in, just getting used to the environment and the flow of how everything goes at the table. It'll get easier over time. I mean, the first couple sessions are just totally nerve-wracking, and I don't suggest anyone just go out and start doing their full bet spread right away. Definitely ease into it and just get comfortable and used to it. But you will get there to the point where you're so comfortable at the table, you're doing everything 100%, but you can also talk to the pit boss and dealer and, do all these other things for free cover that you need to at the table without feeling nervous at all. The only thing you're going to be nervous about is trying to gauge whether or not they recognize you at that point. So, yeah, I would say just put more time into it at the beginning, but go slow and not go all out on the spread right away. I have a question from our friend Joe Miner on the forum. He listened to the podcast recently when SD1 was talking about playing two hands. And his follow-up question is, under what circumstances do you change from playing two hands only? What do you play during negative hands? What do you do heads up? Is it differently 2-deck versus 6-deck?
With my bankroll size, it doesn't really change that much anymore, just to be blunt about it. That being said, there are, reasons to do it. I actually will drop to one hand towards a really good shoe sometimes to get a couple more rounds in. So that's something unique that I do, and also really tends to throw people off if they are really paying that much attention. But when I say that I prefer playing two hands, and that I personally think that going from one hand to two hands frequently just screams counter, that's my personal opinion. That goes hand in hand with my perception, my observation at a table. And I always try to act as a gambler. And I just don't see gamblers do that. They will occasionally do stuff. They will throw off or change the flow of the cards, and they'll announce it. And I use that at my disposal. That's in my tool belt. I will, if it gets really bad, drop to one hand to get through the shoe. But in general, I stick with two hands because of that reason. With your bankroll size, though, it is very valuable to go from one hand to two hands. So for me, if you're less than 50K of a bankroll, because in the beginning of my career, even at 50K, what I started with, I went from one hand to two hands. It just saves a lot of rent. It makes your spread bigger instantly, too. Those are just my thoughts, Joe. What are your thoughts?
How do you feel about going from two hands to one hand, like you said, in the positive count? Do you think that's better than having two hands out and then you're doing lopsided bets on the positive? Like, let's say $1,000 max and you have two hands. One hand's 1,000, the other hand is like 100, and you switch back and forth each round between what hand is higher, what hand is lower.
Yeah, no, I think that's a strategy you can use too. You can do some really fun, crazy stuff, especially if you have the bankroll.
That's the main point, yeah.
Yeah, if you have the bankroll, and it could be $1,000 and 100, and then the count didn't change. It's still a true two. Let's say, and that bet is your true two bet. Okay, increasing the other one also, if you're cool with it on the risk of ruin. So it's not necessarily 1,001. Maybe you do 1,005, and then you drop down to 1,001, and the count didn't change, but you switch them, or you throw in a third hand randomly. you can do some wackadoo stuff that makes them just go, what is this guy doing? That just looks like a complete degenerate.
Yeah, and I haven't done too much of that because I've playing at so many $500 max places and I want to get the most money out. But of the few times that I've tried to do something like that, it is definitely helps with the act too, because if I switch the hands and I have the big bet up, if I get a blackjack or something on the big hand, my natural reaction is so, I'm so elated and like happy about it because I chose right, quote unquote, chose right, you know? And vice versa. If I end up getting the 16, I lose or something, then I can actually feel aggravated versus if I'm just grinding away for hours at the same 2x500. I'm just like a zombie at that point, you know, just like.
I always like use the dealers too. What should I do, dealer? And this is typically used like when the count's high, right? And you win a couple big hands, or you catch a natural or something natural on both hands. Like, holy shit, you're going nuts. And you look at the dealer and you go, do I press? And the dealer 100% of the time is going to be like, yes. So it's like you're getting advice from the dealer. That's just always fun, as if, you know, you're engaging them as what you should do. Do I protect myself here or do like a big double or whatever? That's always a lot of fun. And then it's also fun. So we've discussed this before, and we're not going to get into like the very few amount of cover plays that I do or that we do. Go to boot camp, you'll hear a lot of them that are very strategic and don't cost as much. But one that you can very occasionally use, and I've talked about it before, is you start with a pit boss right by you. You start the shoe with a bigger bet. If I had two hands of 500 out, I feel the heat, and I'm pretty attuned to heat right now, guys. So if you're newer, don't back yourself off, and you're going to think everything's heat. If you're pretty tuned into heat, pit boss is coming over, your action is getting sweated, you got two hands of 1,000 out. Okay, shuffle. When you immediately just drop down to min bet, and listen, guys, that's counting. So if you're going to go at it that way, like Joe would every single time, not scared at all, that's good, that's fine. But if you want to think about it in a different way and try to beat this, then you could put out a much bigger bet one-handed. And then using what I just said, engaging a dealer like, oof, that shoe is really good. Do I press? And they say yes, you go, okay, I'm going to go bigger, but I'm just going to go one hand. You win, you play it until you lose it. You lose, you look at the dealer and go, well, you were wrong, and then right back down. So play the casino, not just the game.
Yeah, and I will say, as aggressive of a player as I am, and as little as I want to give up in negative situations, I will say the longest I've ever been able to continuously play at one property was the first night when they half-shoed me and I played through, you know, several shoes, half-shoe cut, negative. Not saying it's going to happen every time, but it does account for something. You just have to do a good job of calculating how much the negative cost is to what you think you're going to get out of it.
And let's go right back to the thing we said multiple times. Your bankroll really, really matters in this scenario because you are giving up real money, guys. We think EV.
Yep. Like similar to the earlier question, if you're in that $2,000 to $5,000 bankroll range, don't do any of this cover stuff at all.
I don't know if I'd be doing any of this stuff under 50, to be quite honest with you. It can be really costly.
All right, that about wraps it up for our questions. We could always use more mailbag questions, so if you guys just go to the YouTube channel Blackjack Apprenticeship and you can submit questions in the comments. We have a community tab in there. In the channel, if you're a part of blackjackapprenticeship.com, you can go into the forum, ask questions there, and we will get them queued up and ready for the next mailbag. Our next bootcamp is currently full, and we won't have another one in 2025. So if bootcamp is something you're interested for 2026, you can also go to blackjackapprenticeship.com and there's a bootcamp section. There's a whole bunch of information about it, and you can schedule your free consultation with one of the pros to see if the bootcamp is a good fit for you.